The invitation came on a Thursday evening, a crisp white envelope sealed with gold wax, my sister Clara's handwriting looping across it like a ribbon of pride. Family dinner, Saturday, 7 p.m. at La Vienne. I stared at the name for a long moment. La Vienne, one of those glittering places I'd only seen through the restaurant windows while walking home from work, where chandeliers sparkled like bottled stars and a single plate could cost half my week's salary. Still, Clara was my sister. Maybe she wanted to reconnect. Maybe she wanted Ethan, my 8-year-old son, to meet his cousins properly this time. "Will there be dessert?" Ethan asked, eyes wide with hope. "Probably," I said, forcing a smile. "Aunt Clara's place always has plenty." When Saturday came, I dressed him in his cleanest shirt and brushed his hair twice. We took the bus across the city. The restaurant glowed like a palace, velvet curtains, marble floors, and waiters who spoke in soft, polished tones. Clara stood up as we entered, dazzling in a silk dress, her diamond earrings catching the light. Her husband, Richard, nodded politely over the top of his champagne glass. Their 2 children, Lily and Max, were already glued to their tablets, expensive watches glinting on their wrists. "Maya, you look simple," Clara said, her voice sweet and sharp all at once. We sat down, and Ethan's eyes lit up when he saw the menu: pasta with cheese, grilled chicken, strawberry shortcake. He whispered, "Mom, can I have this one, please?" Before I could open my mouth, Clara's laughter cut across the table. "Oh, sweetheart, we didn't order for your son," she said lightly, like she was talking about the weather. "You didn't mention he was coming, but there's a bread basket. He can have that." The waiter placed it in front of Ethan. 4 cold rolls in a wicker basket. No butter, no plate, my heart twisted. Clara's children were soon served golden fries and $100 steaks, their plates steaming and fragrant. Ethan picked up a roll, smiling bravely. "It's okay, Mom. I like bread." But I saw the way his small hands trembled. I saw the way Clara looked at me smug, detached, proud of her polished cruelty. I chewed on silence the rest of the night, tasting humiliation with every breath. When we finally left, Ethan tugged my hand. "Mom," he said softly, "next time, can I bring my own sandwich?" I smiled through the tears burning my throat. "Yes, baby," I whispered, "next time we'll bring our own." And somewhere deep inside me, something began to harden like dough before it rises. The bus ride home was quiet. Ethan leaned his head against my arm, his eyelids heavy. He didn't say a word about dinner, and neither did I. The city lights flickered past the window like fragments of gold we could never quite touch. When we got home, he changed into his pajamas and crawled under the blanket. "Good night, Mom," he mumbled, voice small. "Good night, sweetheart." He turned away, his back rising and falling softly, but I could hear the low rumble of his empty stomach. It was faint, but to me, it was louder than thunder. I sat beside him, brushing a hand over his hair. He had fallen asleep pretending he was full. When his breathing evened out, I slipped into the bathroom and locked the door. That was when the tears came, hot, bitter, relentless. I pressed my hands over my mouth to muffle the sobs. I didn't want him to hear. How could my own sister do that? How could she look at my child and decide he wasn't worth a plate of food? I stared at my reflection, in the cracked mirror, eyes swollen, hair limp from the drizzle outside. I looked like exhaustion itself, but behind the tiredness was something else, something sharper, shame. Memories of our childhood flooded back like ghosts. I remembered Clara at 10 years old, crying because there wasn't enough rice for dinner. I'd split my portion in half and handed it to her, saying, "It's fine, I'm not that hungry." She'd smiled through tears and promised she'd never forget. But she had. Somewhere between the money, the diamonds, and the designer dresses, my sister had buried the memory of who we once were. 2 girls sharing bread in a 1-room apartment. I sank to the floor and wept until the cold tiles pressed patterns into my skin. When the tears finally ran dry, I made a promise. Not to Clara, not to the world, but to myself. Never again, I whispered, never again will my child be handed crumbs when he deserves a feast. I didn't know how I'd make it happen. I had no savings, no connections, and barely enough strength to face another workday. But I had my hands, my heart, and a reason stronger than pride, Ethan. As dawn crept through the window, I wiped my eyes and stepped out of the bathroom. My son was still asleep, one small hand curled under his cheek. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "One day, you'll never go hungry again." And in that moment I believed it. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. My eyes were swollen, but my mind was clear. Something inside me had shifted. I went to the kitchen, opened the empty bread box, and stared at the crumbs left from last night's dinner. Bread, that word echoed in my chest like a challenge. The very thing that humiliated us would be what I'd use to rise. I found a recipe in an old notebook, one my mother used to follow: simple white bread, flour, water, yeast, and love. That morning, I made my first loaf. It was uneven, cracked on top, and a little burnt, but when I tore it open, the warm smell filled our tiny apartment like hope. When Ethan woke up, he rubbed his eyes and smiled. "Did you buy bread, Mom?" "No," I said, handing him a slice. "I made it." His eyes widened. "You made it." He took a bite, and the way he smiled, that small, honest smile, was enough to make my tired heart lift. That day marked the beginning. Every night after work, I baked. Sometimes it was bread, sometimes rolls or small pastries. I gave them to neighbors, to the woman downstairs who watched Ethan while I worked, to the old man at the bus stop. Word spread faster than I expected. "Maya, your bread tastes like home." People said, "You should sell this," so I did. I started with one small stall at the weekend market, a simple wooden table, and a handwritten sign that read, "Ethan's Basket, Bread with Heart." The name came easily, from the same basket that had once carried Humiliation. At first, it was just a few loaves a day. Then a dozen, then 50. Local cafes started calling. One of them placed a big order for a charity event. Every night, Ethan helped me pack, sticking labels with his small hands. "We're really doing it, Mom," he'd say proudly. And each time, I'd look at him and think, yes, we are. Years passed. What started in a cramped kitchen became a small bakery with golden light spilling from its windows, and the smell of freshly baked bread curling into the street. I still wore the same apron, still mixed the dough by hand, but now every loaf carried a story, our story. And though Clara's face still flashed in my memory sometimes, it no longer brought pain. Because now, we had turned Crumbs into something whole. 3 years later, our bakery had become something of a local treasure. Ethan's basket was always warm, always full of laughter, and always smelled like comfort. Every loaf carried our story, not one of pity, but of perseverance. Then one morning, my assistant rushed into the shop, excitement lighting her face. "Maya, you won't believe this. We just got a catering request for the Richmond Foundation Gala." I froze. Clara Richmond, my sister, fate it seemed, had a poetic sense of humor. I accepted the order without hesitation. We prepared baskets filled with our finest bread, soft rolls brushed with butter, small pastries dusted with sugar, and warm loaves that could make a heart sigh. Each basket carried our signature tag, Ethan's Basket, for every child who deserves more than crumbs. The night of the gala, the hall shimmered with gold. Waiters glided through the crowd, placing our bread baskets at each table. Guests smiled, complimenting the aroma, asking who had made them. And then she appeared, Clara, radiant in a gown of midnight blue, laughter dripping like honey. Her husband was busy greeting donors, her children posing for photos. When her gaze finally landed on me, she froze. "Maya," she breathed, "what are you doing here?" I smiled gently, "Catering your event." Her eyes flicked toward the tables, dozens of bread baskets, every single one stamped with my son's name. Recognition dawned in her face like a storm. People were already talking about the bread, praising its flavor and warmth. A journalist approached me. "This is incredible," he said. "What inspired your bakery's name?" I looked directly at Clara, my voice calm but steady. "Once, my son and I went to dinner with family," I said. "They ordered a feast but told us we hadn't been included. They gave my boy a bread basket instead. That moment changed my life. I decided to make sure no child ever felt small because of what was on their plate." The hall grew silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. I caught Ethan's proud smile from across the room. Clara's face turned pale. She clutched her glass, words failing her for the first time in years. I leaned close enough for only her to hear. This time, I said softly, "There's enough bread for everyone." She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Because that night, under the glow of chandeliers and the scent of warm bread, my revenge was served not with bitterness, but with grace. And it was sweeter than anything money could ever buy.